for their week 1 matchup. I'm going to tell you why you don't need to panic just yet. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on another episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst over at WWL TV. On today's episode of Locked On Saints, we are live as we continue on with our two-a-days. If I'm doing too much, just tell me, because otherwise I'm never going to stop doing too much. We're going to take a look at some good injury news for the New Orleans Saints offensive line getting a much-needed boost. We're going to take a look at Alvin Kamara, who updated on his own contract negotiations today and explain why he's selling his house. We're also going to kick everything off here today, though, with a little bit of negativity, but not too much, I promise. But Willie Gay Jr., New Orleans Saints newly acquired linebacker, an electrifying piece for this New Orleans Saints defense, already missing practice week 1. Not already. We'll dive into it, right? I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't be super concerned around this one, at least not yet. We got all that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making this your first listen of the day every day and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is easily the most fun and exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win that $5 bet to win the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. And the New Orleans Saints are trying to run their game, or at least get their run game ready for the upcoming game up against the Carolina Panthers on Sunday. See what I did there? And as they got back to practice, it was a bit of a bonus day of practice today. Okay. So it wasn't really like the first practice of week 1 just yet. That will officially be on Wednesday, which will include injury reports, all those kinds of things. But the news coming out of bonus practice on Monday is who wasn't there. People that we didn't expect to see weren't there. No surprise when it comes to defensive tackle Colin Saunders, when it comes to DeMarco Jackson or Jalen Ford, the 2 linebackers. But the big concern came with the third linebacker that was missing, or one of the 3 linebackers that was missing, in Willie Gay Jr. Now, Willie Gay Jr. was brought in on a 1-year deal with some incentives here over the course of the offseason and has, without a doubt, been one of the most electrifying pieces for the New Orleans Saints. I'll call it new look defense when it comes to the front 7, right? Adding Christian Boyd, adding now, via trade, another defensive tackle coming out of the Washington Commanders. You've got the addition of Willie Gay Jr. So yeah, pretty new look front 7, at least, for the New Orleans Saints. But I don't think that it's time to panic on this one just yet. Dennis Allen did confirm that he missed practice due to injury, but declined to go into much specifics in terms of what that injury was, which again makes sense. They don't have to tell us anything right now when it comes to injuries, right? It's not week 1. There's no injury report until Wednesday and all those other things. But I'm just not really ready to push the panic button on this one yet. We saw, and I mean this when I say this, a litany of injuries over the course of training camp and everything. And a lot of it was precautionary. I mean, hey, don't worry about it. Just be ready for week 1 kind of stuff. Or, hey, don't worry about it. Like, take it easy kind of stuff and everything like that. Like, there was a lot of that kind of going on, not necessarily in those words, but there was a lot of that, like, all right, take it easy. Don't make it worse than it already is kind of approach over the course of training camp. With this being a bonus practice or a bonus day of practice ahead of week 1, week 1's practice is actually beginning. It's not super surprising to me that, or it wouldn't be super surprising to me if this was just another taking precaution type of a situation. But I do think that it is important for the New Orleans Saints to have Willie Gay Jr. ready at the beginning of the season, because he does bring a lot of value for this team, brings a ton of energy, brings some championship winning experience, adds to what has become one of the strongest units on this New Orleans Saints team as a whole, the linebacker room with Demario Davis, Willie Gay, and Pete Werner, of course, a part of that as well. Would the Saints be fine if they went into week one with Demario Davis and Pete Werner and no Willie Gay? Yeah, they'll be fine. That's what they typically have had over the course of the past few years. And they've been very good at the second level thanks to Demario Davis and Pete Werner. But the addition of Willie Gay helping out as a supplemental blitzer, the New Orleans Saints, one of the most productive second level supplementary blitz teams. And in other words, most successful teams utilizing linebackers in their pass rush is what I mean by that. Having Willie Gay be a part of that is, well, for lack of a better phrase, helpful. It's good to have. And so having him out on the field would be a huge boon, a huge boost to this New Orleans Saints defense, without a doubt. But is it worth rushing anything? Is it worth potentially anything getting worse over the course of the season? Maybe not necessarily. Now, here's my big concern for the Saints with this injury. If this player, Willie Gay Jr., is not able to get back out to the field so that he can take the field with Demario Davis and Pete Werner, there will be a lot of 3 linebacker sets this year. The Saints are also dealing with injuries to DeMarco Jackson, as well as rookie Jalen Ford, who are also on the active roster. So this would mean them having to turn to Anthony Orji, which is fine. They love what Anthony Orji has been able to do. He can play all 3 linebacker positions, which I think is a good thing for this particular situation. With Demario Davis healthy, with Pete Werner healthy, nothing that you have to be concerned about there. So if you don't have Willie Gay Jr., then you can plug in Anthony Orji to be that other guy, right? And then if ever there is an injury to Demario Davis, if ever there is an injury to Pete Werner, Anthony Orji's experience and versatility would allow them to be able to overcome a little bit of that. Now, they do also have a couple of linebackers over on their practice squad between guys like Isaiah Stallbird in particular as a guy that could potentially rise up and help them as well, or be brought up and then potentially help them out from a numbers situation, from a special teams sort of viewpoint and everything like that. So the team could still walk in with 4 healthy linebackers for week one if they needed to. They have a lot of all that, but I think that there's those things to figure out. But we won't really know exactly what Willie Gay's injury is until Wednesday, and who knows, he might be back at practice then. But that's when we get our first injury reports. That's when we'll get a better understanding sort of what this situation is. But I think that there's no reason to push any kind of panic button at this point. I think that there is a good chance here that this could just be the team being precautious, but who knows? It might be saying that, and then it ends up being something more drastic than that. So we will wait and see what happens when it gets to Sunday's game, or excuse me, when it gets to Wednesday's practice. My apologies. When we get the injury report at that time. So we'll see what happens there. Up next, and in a little bit, look, it's not just all bad injury news for the New Orleans Saints. They also got some players back this week that I think are really important. So we're going to dive into that. But before we get to that, I want to take a look at Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara speaking with us today after practice, laid out a little bit of where the contract negotiations are. And I think most importantly, since everyone was so concerned about it, gave you the reason why he's got his house up for sale. We got all that and much more coming up for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is my absolute favorite place to go, and especially right now, thanks to their new feature, Game Time Picks, weeding out all of the fluff on your favorite live events and just making it much easier. It filters out all of that stuff you don't want to see and then shows you only the incredible deals and great seats so that you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Because look, let's face it, Game Time's got a lot of tickets, right? They're a trusted ticket sale, all that. They also have all-in pricing, which you can toggle on so that you're not afraid of what the price might actually be when you get to checkout. Just brings a little bit more transparency into the game over at Game Time. And they also even let you see a view from your seat before you purchase the tickets as well. So you know exactly what to expect before you get there. One of my favorite things about Game Time. So download the Game Time app today so you can take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Just create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This show is also sponsored by BetterHelp. I use BetterHelp. All right. I'm a big proponent. I'm a big advocate for therapy. I love it. It's helped me out a lot in terms of understanding my priorities, understanding the things that I want to spend more time getting better at. What about the things that I want to learn, right? Like, I don't want to lose that just because I'm not in school anymore, or I'm not a kid anymore. I don't want to lose that kind of sense of wonder, even though I've kind of, grown up and all these other things. I mean, grown up, I'll say loosely, but look, I want my back to school era to continue. And I do think that a big part of what has helped me be able to do that is BetterHelp. So I highly suggest you go and check them out. If you've been thinking about therapy, I would absolutely say to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible, convenient, suited to your schedule. No traffic, no waiting rooms, none of that. Just you and an opportunity to rediscover your curiosity thanks to BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/locked-on so you can get 10% off of your first month. Once again, that is BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked-on. All right, family. New Orleans Saints running back Alvin Kamara giving us the lowdown, the update, if you will, on where his contract negotiations stand. And honestly, it sounds like they might just kind of revisit this after the season at this point. We appreciate you very much for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you go and check out the brand new and revamped Locked On NFL podcast. 2 episodes a day. The Madman Tyler Rowland, The Barbershop with Tony Wiggins. Fantastic NFL talk with the help of our local experts here on the network. Yes, a national show that actually leans on the local experts to make sure that the information's correct. How cool is that? Make sure you go check them out today, Locked On NFL. And you can catch me over there with Tyler on Fridays as well. All right. So Alvin Kamara met with the media after practice and kind of updated us on where things are in terms of his contract negotiations. I did a show earlier today because we're back to 2-a-days here as we continue on. Like I said, if I'm doing too much, just tell me. I think that it's time for the New Orleans Saints to get a contract extension done with Alvin Kamara. There was a deal on the table, according to, SI.com's reporting over there. And so I want to be cognizant of the fact that there was a deal on the table, but yet no deal has been agreed upon. So now you're kind of entering this week 1 area. At what point do you just say, okay, well, I'm turning my focus to week 1, the regular season. I'm not worried about the contract extension anymore. Are you willing to push that all the way to Friday, Saturday? Are you willing to kind of see through the opportunity to maybe get a deal done? All of the, when it comes to post week 1 or anything like that? I don't know, but it sounded like from Alvin Kamara's standpoint, he just wants to focus on the season. Basically what he said was he was very clear that like whether a contract gets done or not, doesn't matter. He's here to play. So he'll be out there on the field for them. No doubt about that. But he might just say, you know what, we'll just revisit this conversation at the end of the season. And he kind of alluded to that during his conversation with us. And the New Orleans Saints absolutely need that. They don't have another option at running back when it comes to what Alvin Kamara is set to give this team with the new system. Jamal Williams is a very, very good running back, but he is not Alvin Kamara's archetype of a back in terms of all the different things that Alvin Kamara can do. Jordan Mims, very talented, looked really good over the course of training camp at the preseason, but technically still an unknown commodity, right? Like that's fair to say because he hasn't gotten regular season snaps with the team in which he has been a part of their brand new system. No one has. So the only person that's really a proven commodity from what you feel like can absolutely fit in this system is Alvin Kamara and then Jamal Williams in certain situations, right? So you want to make sure that you have Alvin Kamara ready to go. So for Kamara, I think that the idea here is don't want the distraction, right? Oh, contract didn't get done. Oh, well, it's game time. Not worried about it, right? So I think that that's the way that he's looking at this. And it certainly sounds like that's the way that he's looking at it. Now, I've had a lot of people ask me this, and this stuff happens all the time, right? Well, Ross, he put his house up for sale. Let me tell you something. If you're under the impression, for whatever reason, that Alvin Kamara owns a single property and that selling one property is any indication of what's happening with him and his contract negotiations and everything like that, you are sorely mistaken, and completely miss how the money works when it comes to the NFL. Alvin Kamara talked a little bit about this, and he mentioned that he's got multiple properties and that he was selling the house. Now, he made jokes about, going and living with like a local situation and stuff like that. Lots of good jokes in terms of that. It was all very funny. But my main takeaway from it was you're never going to get an indication of someone's contract negotiations based upon their Zillow ads. It's just not going to happen. These guys own more than one property all over the league, right? Alvin Kamara owns more than one property in New Orleans, like in town and all those other things. And so, and I completely agree with Aaron that like, look, with the amount that you have to pay now in Louisiana for mortgage and home insurance, you're paying a pair of mortgages for every dang house you own. I don't blame him for selling the thing. And also, he wants to get into things like, real estate and all that kind of stuff. He mentioned that a family member of his was a real estate agent or is a real estate agent and everything like that. So I just wouldn't take much away. And look, I'm sure that there are some examples. Some would probably point out Kirk Cousins, but I'm sure that there are some examples of you actually being able to glean something when it comes to these types of things. But this is not what that is in this situation. And Alvin Kamara being very clear that he's very intentional about the way that he moves in terms of setting himself up for his life post-football, as well as, of course, like he's not going to do something like that would give away where things are headed out there in public. He knows very well what the social media engagement looks like, what the social media game looks like, and the way that people latch on to all of these things. So I would just say that if you want to know more about how a New Orleans Saints contract negotiation is going, rely on local media and the people that you trust. Don't worry about the Zillow ads. It'll be okay. But look, I think that the good news here is that it sounds like no matter what happens contract-wise, Alvin Kamara is determined to play and to be out there and to contribute to this team because as he described during training camp, that his contract negotiations don't have anything to do with him and his teammates. His contract negotiation don't have anything to do with him and his coaches. He doesn't negotiate the contracts. His team negotiates the contracts. And the coaches and players have nothing to do with those contract negotiations from the New Orleans Saints side and perspective at all. But I'll tell you where the coaches can make a difference. And that is when you bring in a new offensive system that will elevate Alvin Kamara and his skill set the way that Clint Kubiak, New Orleans Saints' new offensive coordinator, looks to be prepared to do with his new offensive system. The wide zone system, outside zone runs, utilizing the running backs in the passing game, all of those other things. All that stuff ends up helping Alvin Kamara if he has a good season here in 2024. And so really, the coaching should actually help, or let me say it this way, the game plan should be able to help Alvin Kamara be able to come back to the drawing board after the season or next offseason and say, so what are we thinking? You know what I mean? It should end up helping him. So if I were anybody looking at this team and saying that you want the best for it, you're hoping that the New Orleans Saints dip into the running back draft class because it's going to be one of the best running back draft classes in the history of the NFL is what people are saying. So definitely something to watch there. Lots of UCF love, lots of Boise State love in terms of that. But also, you want Alvin Kamara to have a strong season here in 2024, because if he has a strong season in 2024 and gets a reasonable contract extension done, reasonable is the key word with that, then you have something to build off of going into 2025 with ideally a very good young running back added to this room in the NFL draft. So that's what we're going to be looking for here for the New Orleans Saints. Or, of course, not to leave him out of the conversation, Kendre Miller shows up and ends up having, a big year once he's back from his hamstring injury. So any of those things are positives for the New Orleans Saints and for Saints fans. Coming up next, it wasn't all bad news when it came to injuries. New Orleans Saints offensive line getting a much needed boost with the return of Nick Saldiveri. I'll describe why that is important for New Orleans. We got that coming up for you next. So continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks, the #1 daily fantasy destination for me and all my friends, because I absolutely love me some PrizePicks. And so let me tell you all about it. This is the way that it works, right? You end up going through, you pick 2 to 6 players, and then against their projections, you choose more or less. You think that Blake Grupe is going to kick more or less, or have more or less than 2 good field goals in week 1. You think Derek Carr is going to throw for more or less than his projections at quarterback. You get the idea here. So that's it. That's all you got to do. And then if you end up getting just 4 correct picks, you can win back up to 100 times your entry. And you can even get a free entry, basically, or a free win, basically, for the next few weeks, because throughout September, 1 Caleb Williams passing yard from the Chicago Bears is a win on PrizePicks every week during September. So make sure you go and check it out. You can head over to PrizePicks today. Download the PrizePicks app today. Download, use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You're going to get a $50 instant credit and bonus and boost when you play just $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL, all lowercase, over at PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5, and you don't even have to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode with a look at some good news for the New Orleans Saints when it comes to their injury conversations. The Saints getting back to practice today. Again, not officially week 1 just yet. It's a little bit more of like a bonus week for where the team is. And Nick Saldiveri returned to practice, which I think is a big and positive thing for the New Orleans Saints, especially over on the offensive side of the football and on that offensive line. So thank you very much for being here for another episode. Blessings to everybody that comes through and has joined, whether you're live or later. We appreciate you very much for being here. We're switching back to 2-a-days every day except for Tuesdays when the Saints don't have practice. So we'll have a fresh morning episode, and then every day where there is a practice, we'll have a live show later on, kind of recapping practice. Wednesday will always be a little bit later. Just a heads up, just because of my network meetings. You know, I got another job to do too, I guess, every now and then. All right, so the New Orleans Saints offensive line, I mentioned in an episode last week, still needs help, in my opinion. It's not an offensive line that I feel fully comfortable with, or that I feel fully is fully reliable outside of certain spots, right? Like Eric McCoy, one of the most reliable centers in the NFL. You feel good there. You feel pretty good about where Taliesin Fuanga has come along in terms of left tackle. You should feel good, although I know it's popular not to. You should feel pretty good about where Cesar Ruiz is going into this year. The big question marks are at left guard and right tackle. Trevor Penning at right tackle. We believe it's going to be Lucas Patrick at left guard because it has been Lucas Patrick at left guard all offseason. But here's where things get a little bit interesting. The New Orleans Saints welcome back Nick Saldiveri participating in practice, at least during the portion of practice that's open to media. We get about 25, let's say 20 to 30 minutes throughout the week, right? Sometimes it's 25 minutes, sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes. It all kind of depends on the day. But during the time that we were there, which is like individual drill, stretch, and stuff like that, Nick Saldiveri was participating. This is a big step forward for Saldiveri, who hadn't participated in like most of training camp and then in none of the preseason. So this is good news. Remember, the Saints traded up to the very first pick of day 3 last year in the 2023 NFL draft to specifically draft Nick Saldiveri. And if you're an everydayer and you heard all of our pre-draft episodes leading up to the 2023 NFL draft, you knew that Nick Saldiveri was not a mystery that the Saints like Nick Saldiveri, right? So what is it that he brings? Well, I think, first of all, he brings a lot of value in terms of his versatility on the interior. And this is what the New Orleans Saints like to have when it comes to their depth. Look at the guys that made the roster behind the top 5. Oli Udoh, Landon Young, Nick Saldiveri. All versatile pieces. Oli Udoh can play both tackle spots and play on the interior. Same thing for Landon Young, who can play on both tackle spots and in the interior. And then you have Nick Saldiveri, who can play both interior spots and can technically play center as well. Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl, executive director of the Senior Bowl, spoke with us after the NFL draft and did mention that he believed that Nick Saldiveri's best position was actually when he played at the Senior Bowl, which was center, or where he worked out at center during his time at the Senior Bowl, more appropriately. So the Saints getting Nick Saldiveri back, look, it doesn't make the entire offensive line all of a sudden better, right? You still have to see how the starters perform. Has Trevor Penning turned enough of a corner to be an adequate starter for the team? Does Lucas Patrick give you enough on the interior? All that kind of stuff. But might not answer all those questions. However, it does give you valuable depth, and it does put the Saints in a bit of a better situation than they were in when the 53-man roster was set, and we weren't necessarily sure when Nick Saldiveri was going to be ready. Now, Dennis Allen did say that they expected to have him back soon, so he was right about that, as that was last week, and then now here we are into this week, all those things. But the next thing is, how soon is he in football condition? How soon is he ready to actually play? Will he be active on game day? All those other things. Good news for New Orleans is that if he can't be active on game day because he's not necessarily in like football shape just yet, right? Like that takes a lot. It's not just healing from the injury and getting past the mental side of the injury. It's also about making sure that like your conditioning is right and you're ready. If that's not the case, they've got like Kyle Hergel that they can fall back on and all these other guys that are really talented that are on the practice squad. And they just brought in Austin Deculus not long ago, who's going to give you a little bit more at tackle, but still gives you a little bit there. So I think it's a boost for the New Orleans Saints offensive line. Does it mean that you should feel really, really good about the offensive line and that there's nothing to worry about ever again when it comes to it? No, absolutely not. But this is a step in the right direction for the New Orleans Saints and the offensive line. Nick Saldiveri wasn't the only one that returned to practice today. We also saw Isaiah Stallbird come back to practice, well-timed for the New Orleans Saints, who are in need of those special teams linebackers that will be able to help out. So let's say that DeMarco Jackson and Jalen Ford aren't ready to go at the beginning of for week one. Then I think you've got a guy like Isaiah Stallbird that can step into that role. And then Khaleke Hudson as well, who has been a starter in the NFL, who has been a core special teamer in the NFL for the Washington Commanders. So they're in pretty good shape there, even if they're without Willie Gay, DeMarco Jackson, and Jalen Ford. The Saints also saw the return to practice or the practice field of Dallin Holker, New Orleans Saints undrafted free agent tight end, the guy that they call their 8th round draft pick, right? He wasn't participating, but he's a fan favorite. He wasn't participating, but he was there. He was walking around. I have been told that the Saints or that Holker would be able to get back to practice if they felt like they needed him to get back to practice last week. He could have done it and all those other things. The Saints might not necessarily feel that they need to rush Dallin Holker back just yet, right? They've got a healthy Juwan Johnson. They've got a healthy Foster Moreau. They have a healthy Taysom Hill. They've got guys on the practice squad that they can elevate as well. Trayton Welsh, who they just brought in, as well as Michael Jacobson, who's still on that practice squad as well. So they could elevate one of those guys as well as a standard game day elevation and all that. And then they could take their time with Dallin Holker. But I'm curious to see if Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, we see Dallin Holker getting a little bit more involved and actually practicing with the intent to be ready for Sunday's game. However, I think that there is a chance that he's like inactive for the first game. And if that happens, that's okay. There's time for him to get ready, but we'll get a better indication of that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's just me speculating and sharing what the possibilities could look like. And basically just trying to say that the possibilities don't necessarily show anything that says that, well, this is the worst possible situation ever. they'll be fine. But it is good to see Dallin Holker getting back. All right. That's all my notes from practice today. We appreciate you very much for being here. Yes, we did ask Dennis Allen more about the quarterback 2 battle. We're going to dive into that in tomorrow morning's episode. So make sure you come back for that. 2 days are back. We appreciate you very much, as always, for being here, for making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out that new Locked On NFL show. I promise you it's worth your time. It's awesome. It's super fun. Tony and Tyler do a great job, and our fantastic lineup of co-hosts also doing a great job. So make sure you go and check that out. And also check out Locked Up Pelicans with my good friend Jake Madison and then my good friend Matt Moscona over at Locked On LSU. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.